If you enjoy this content, please take a moment to rate and review it. Your feedback will greatly impact our ability to reach more people. Thank you.
Wild week. A lot going on.
Yeah, there is a lot going on. It just doesn't really stop, and I've ceased to have an expectation that it's going to stop. But some of the stuff just is kind of take your breath away kind of stuff. Just thinking about the implications for the broader industry as it happens. Yeah.
I think we'll dig into it. That's right. The UnitedHealth story is sort of, the first, second, third, fourth main story.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of other stuff we're going to talk about, which I'm excited about because, there are many, many other things happening, but there are so many aspects of that story to include the questions around the validity of the story as well. Like there's so many things
right
that are there that we have to try to parse through, but all of it just feels, I don't know, man. I mean, it feels like on one hand we've been talking about how this industry has got to face the music, based on the growing, expanding costs sort of year over year, growing from $2 trillion to $4 trillion. Like that would be fine if the customer was not the government and not the American taxpayer, right? So obviously that's kind of a problematic thing. But now that we're sort of in that reckoning, and you're just like, I mean, how does this work? How is this going to function? How are we going to get to the other side of this without real impairment to the healthcare system, to jobs, to the care we can reasonably expect as citizens? It's just and I know everyday people aren't thinking about it every day, but those of us who are in the industry are thinking about it every day, and it's I think people are kind of locked up and frozen. I mean, of course, you say we'll get through it. Yes, we will get through it. I know that part, but not without tremendous pain, right?
Yeah, So I remember Brad Smith was involved in the first Trump administration. He's doing something now that I don't know the details of, but when he got back from DC to Nashville, we were chatting, we had dinner, and I was just asking him, like, what's it like? And his comment was, it's really fun, but also it is like to have that impact is enriching or fun. But there's this weight that you have all of these 330 million people that need to be taken care of. And so you can't make change. He was saying, I couldn't make the change I wanted to make because I have to, what he's now is you have to keep flying the plane while you're making all these changes.
Right.
And there's real humans that are getting care every day. And I think that is the best way to sum it up. Like, we're trying to make changes to the system that I think needs change.
Right.
And maybe even it has to be done quickly to have an effect.
Right.
That's what a lot of Republicans would say. But I think that there's side effects, or there's people that are impacted too, which is just hard.
Yeah. Let's start with the economy. I think there was some good news this week.
Yes.
So it's been an interesting 2 weeks, and I feel like it didn't get covered last week because I think it happened Friday, and now that we're here, I'm not sure that you have it in here, but I do want to at least reference that the end of last week there was a Saudi U.S. Trade summit that happened in Saudi Arabia.
I think it was Monday.
Was it Monday?
I think it was Monday.
I thought it was Friday.
Because Trump's still over there now.
Yeah.
He's in Saudi, Qatar, and UAE.
Yeah. Do you have a story for that?
I don't have a story on it, but the Saudis, I think it was $90 billion, but there were no healthcare companies in there. They agreed to, they signed kind of letters of intent. There weren't a lot of details in there with a bunch of U.S. companies that went over with the Trump entourage.
Right.
Yeah, that was Monday.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's material. As you know, I spent the week in Riyadh and learned a lot. And so I was not surprised to see that summit take place. And I think over time, Americans are going to understand more and more the prominent role that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is going to play in the global economy. It's not, they are a real G20 global economy player.
And getting them investing capital and their energy and having trade back and forth. There's a group that's coming to Tennessee looking at investing a bunch of money here. Compared to going the other way towards Asia, it's just really good, I think, for the U.S. and for the Middle East.
Yeah. And look, if you've never been there, I mean, I guess what I can say is there is very positive sentiment, and it's historic, longstanding positive sentiment in Saudi Arabia for America.
Yeah.
It's a deeply embedded thing. And so, none of that is surprising, but it is really noteworthy. It's really noteworthy as we talk about the future of the economy. Okay, so let's move on to the U.S. China trade deal, because we had tariffs in excess of 100% up until this week. And now they are down temporarily. Was it a 90-day?
90-day pause to allow both sides to negotiate.
Yeah.
Which was great. They announced it Sunday night, I think, at like 1 a.m. Central.
Yeah, because they were in Switzerland.
Right. And really positive, and the stock market was very positive on it. I think it's right. There's a lot of details to be worked out.
Sure.
So it's 90 days of a pause, but a really good sign.
Yeah. So that's a good thing. Anything else you wanted to mention about tariffs, sort of taking a backseat for a second?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm happy to have a little breather for 90 days.
Yeah, I've listened to a few podcasts, and it feels like the general sentiment, and these podcasts were kind of investor podcasts, right? But it seems like people are a little worn out by the tariff stuff, and they would like for Trump to turn his attention to the budget and domestic matters and leave the global trade stuff alone for a minute. I think they feel that whatever point he was trying to make, he's made it as much as he could make it, and he's going to have a win out of this 90-day reprieve, take the win, and turn to the budget. The budget, because there's plenty of work to be done there, and I think generally speaking, he'll just have more kind of support there on budget matters than he will necessarily on continuing to fight these tariff wars that just freak everybody out constantly.
Yeah. I mean, I think he has reset where we're going to have a 10% tariff on most countries that we didn't have last year. And so whether that revenue comes out of the U.S. consumers as a sort of quasi-sales tax or it comes from foreign producers, I think the reality is probably some mix of those things. There's going to be more revenue coming into the federal government.
Yes.
And if they then really focus on cutting money out of the budget, they probably could have a pretty good work on the deficit. I think I didn't put a lot of stories in, but the House and the Senate are both, I think one of the House committees worked 26 hours straight Tuesday and Wednesday this week trying to get their work on the reconciliation bill done. So that's still going on. I'm pretty sure Trump is pushing the Republicans in whatever ways he influences them, but they have to go through that process in Congress.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah, that's right. All right, mild April inflation captures early stages of tariff effects. Wall Street Journal, CPI was up 0.2% over the month, while annual inflation was 2.3%. So,
yeah, very positive.
Positive.
The Fed said last week, we had Rick Aberson here, so you missed it, but they just held everything flat, waiting for more data.
Yeah.
This is really positive. I mean, it's still, of course, not at their 2% level, but I don't think it's ever getting to the 2% level.
2.3 is basically two.
Pretty good.
It's basically two.
Yeah, and so
right?
I don't know. I wanted them to cut last time. I think there's much more risk in downside than getting overheated, but we'll see.
Yeah, but definitely positive for the Fed.
Yeah.
In the long arc of the work they've been doing to try to manage inflation. Microsoft slashing thousands of workers, including management jobs. So it's a 3% cut to the workforce. Microsoft is the most valuable company in the world right now.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, and I think I'd heard that they overtook Apple.
Yeah,
and this will probably make them even more valuable.
yeah,
right.
Yeah, and I think it's just. I mean, it's not a huge story, but I think it's just indicative of these big tech titans, the big companies
they keep doing the layoffs.
They're doing really well, and they keep doing layoffs.
Keep doing them.
And I think the reason is that their investments in technology to run their own business are more powerful.
That's right.
So the people they have are more productive, and they don't need as many people.
That's right.
And that's a trend that I think is going to just continue.
Yeah. I mean, they've all been really clear, whether it's Jensen or Satya or, they were all really clear. Like, Benioff, we have a digital workforce. Today they have a digital workforce. And we're going to, towards the end, we're going to talk about how that starts changing the way that management teams are working. But, they delivering great results on a quarter-over-quarter basis, and
then also
simultaneously, lowering expenses.
Yeah.
Right. All right, moving into the VC rundown. This is on Axios Pro, an exclusive. Clarium lands $27 million to fortify hospital supply chains. Really strong group of investors around the table. North Zone was the lead, but they were joined by General Catalyst, Alicorp, Kaiser Permanente Ventures, Texas Medical Center Ventures, and 1984 Ventures. Total funding $43 million, and this is focusing on sort of improving the outdated hospital supply chain management systems that are running things today.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a intelligence system on top of the the ERP systems that got put in place in the 90s.
Yeah, you're not going to rip them out.
Yeah, you don't rip them out. You just sort of build a layer on top of that, and then they take other data feeds and try to make it all more effective.
Yep.
I think it's needed, so I think it's good.
Yep. Next story is from HIT consultant Olio secures $11 million to scale care coordination platform. So this is Fulcrum Equity Partners. We like the folks at Fulcrum, and Brady Jason Moore is a venture partner there. And this is $11 million Series B round. I liked it because they're focused on the discharge process, and I can't stand the discharge process.
Yeah.
So this is great. Let's get some technology in there to fix this.
That's right. I mean, it is really complicated. As what skilled nursing, what home health, what rehab health, where should the patient go? Where do they want to go with their family? And some options have religious pieces, some don't. And then who has availability? That is a constantly moving target. And so it's a really complicated, so if Olio can solve it, that's a huge benefit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's really, really difficult. And it's the data is not in any streamlined manner where case managers can effectively predict for the families when they're, trying to plan for a discharge where they have a likelihood of being able to get into. It's you find out in that moment, right? It's just hard. It's just really hard. Yeah. So I'm all for any technology platform that can, improve that really painful process. Fierce biotech, J&J and Eli Lilly joined $85 million financing for newly unveiled gene editing biotech Stylus. Not necessarily a very unique name. Stylus Medicine is unsheathing, penning a mission to develop next-gen in vivo genetic medicines, and they were founded with a clear clinical direction and product relevance. Looks like a bunch of fancy words, but it's a biotech company.
Yeah, it's biotech. It's gene editing, which has been, really limited to CAR-T for cancer treatment.
Yeah.
And they are trying to broaden into other, they're certainly going to do cancer, but also other diseases. I think gene and cell therapy are really gaining momentum. And so it's one to follow.
I hope so. I mean, the number of assets that are in the pipeline versus the reality of getting them to market versus the reality of the manufacturing, capabilities that we currently have and the cold chain and all the and the data systems.
You usually have to use the patients. It's like a reverse logistics challenge, which is hard.
Yes. And I mean that's kind of across the board for the gene therapy stuff. It's like it's not small molecule, right?
Right.
It's dependent on their genes, and you got to pull.
You almost need to push it to the edge and have the processing be done at the hospital, but they haven't.
We're nowhere close to being able to do that, right? So I mean, look, I mean, it feels like I don't want to quite call it hype, because I think the efficacy of the science is ahead of our ability to actually deliver it from a operational business perspective.
Yeah,
that feels like the problem. And also, how do we pay for it? Because it's super expensive, right? Okay, we're getting this post from X directly from Somite AI at Somite AI, SOMITE AI, and they have built an AI model that will create any cell type for any person. It's a foundational model for the human cell.
Yeah, so this is sort of in the same theme as the last story. They have created an AI model that, instead of predicting text, the next text thing, it predicts how cells interact and how cells are put together, in order to, they're saying 1,000 times faster and more effectively, predict what cell therapies or gene therapies would be effective. And so obviously it's a model that is just now coming to light, but promising. And there's a lot of it's a Silicon Valley sort of who's who of investor group.
Yeah, $47 million round, Series A, led by Coastal Ventures, and then, Sci-Fi VC, Chan Zuckerberg, Fusion Fund, on and on and on, right? So incredible group around the table, nice size round. I would say actually kind of a small round for a model company, for a frontier model company, but the right people, so they'll be able to get the follow-on capital, no question, right? All right, going back to Fierce, Cohere Health lands $90 million Series C round to expand AI use cases. This was led by Temasek, but they've also got Deerfield, Define, Flare, Capital, so a lot of the usual suspects around the table on this one.
Yeah, so Cohere is known as a prior auth support for payers, which made a lot of money, but is not so popular right now.
Right.
And so they are broadening to use that same AI set of technology and data to broaden what they can do for payers, which I think is smart, and it builds their, addressable market and gets them, a little bit away from the one of the most criticized parts of the payer market. So I think it's smart.
Yep. Pathos AI raises $365 million at a $1.6 billion valuation. This is Series D, so that's why the numbers are so big. But this is a drug development startup, and again, using AI for drug development. They're pretty focused in on the cancer space, and they actually did not share who the investors were in this round. But you have to assume that they've got some pharma companies that are on the cap table.
Right. Yes. I think sometimes when you're in life sciences and biotech like this, that's actually a sign of strength. They have very strong partners, and they're not willing to share.
Yeah, very strong. They got $365 million in the door, and they're not telling you from who. Right. So that's definitely a sign of strength. Previous rounds were led by NEA, Revolution, and Builders VC. So they've got incredible,
plenty of access.
Yeah, plenty of access to capital. All right, and then the final story for the VC roundup is not a round, but it's Carta released their Q1 2025 State of the Private Markets. In order to get access to this, we're going to send you a link to the page where you can get sort of a high-level review of it. But if you want to get the full report, which is what we're sort of talking through, you have to submit your information to Carta, and then you get this PDF download. So we can't give you a link directly to that. If you want to get access to it, you'll have to give them your
you got to give them your information. It's free, but you have to give your data up.
Yeah. So I mean, high level, we walked through this before we press record. What were your thoughts on trends that you picked up in the report?
Yeah, I think it's maybe in the seed stage and the really early stage, kind of where we invest. Yeah, it's maybe a slight down quarter or kind of a hard quarter. It hasn't gotten a lot worse, but it's not getting better. Maybe moderately worse, but not off the table. And then the later stage, B and later, seems to be improving.
Yeah. So let me see how you respond to this. It felt to me that maybe for the first time, as I've been reading these reports, it really looks like seed is starting to soften in terms of capital availability. round counts and amount of capital going down. And I think that is reflective of seed funds are not necessarily, either flush with cash or able to currently raise in this environment, right? So
I mean, I think a lot of funds in general and a lot of seed funds are either out of money and not going to be able to raise another fund.
Yeah. So yes. So that was kind of my read on that. Series A continues to be difficult. There was the divergence of, the number of deals done versus the median valuations. So median valuations are up both on seed and Series A pretty meaningfully. And, we sort of hypothesize that is because the bar is higher now. And in order to get the round done, if the bar is higher, then the quality overall is higher, and that's bringing that median valuation up. Not necessarily people are happy to pay more, but they have to pay more because they're not willing to do the riskier deals anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Fewer deals are getting done. The ones that are done are later, more mature, and worth more.
Yeah.
The other thing that, it's part of me maybe hoping, but I think it's true that you see the venture markets improve kind of from the exits to the late stage, and then A and seed are last to really improve.
Yeah.
And we saw, meaningful uptick in exits. It's not back to the boom time from 3 years ago, but up from last year. And then the later stage rounds are also improving. So there's some hope that will then begin over. It's probably a 12-month lag. So over a period of time, that'll start to filter into the earlier rounds.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing, exits actually were up slightly for the quarter, which was a nice thing to see.
Right.
I feel like those were the big trends that we noticed.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
Kind of not that surprising, but we're certainly not in a recovery, and especially not when we look at deal count. Deal counts continue to go down, right?
Yeah, that's right. And then the other thing that is just was surprising to see is the time from seed to A is, I think it's 2 years.
2.1 years.
Yeah, just over 2 years, which is not a lot of companies are planning for that.
No.
And so
not a lot of firms are planning for that.
Yeah, that's right.
But as we remarked, it does reflect what we're experiencing in our portfolios, right? Like it's kind of a 2 year run, right?
I'm going to start talking to my portfolio. I think we need to start planning for a 2 year.
And by the way, like you're not, when we talk about planning, we're not talking about raising a larger round. We're talking about capital efficiency.
Yeah, that's right.
You're going to have to somehow become the best of the best in a 2 year window with much more capital efficiency. Right. So.
Yeah, that's right. So when you're raising your seed round, we would normally say you got to hit these benchmarks in order to raise the A.
Right.
And I would, before this report, I wouldn't have modeled it on 2 years, but now we have to. So you either need to spend less money every month or raise more. There's not a lot of money hanging around. So you're going to have to, some combination, but probably spend less every month.
Probably spend less. Moving into policy, CMS proposes crackdown on money laundering provider tax policies. This is modern healthcare. They put modern money laundering in quotes. And of course, we're finally at the moment where we're talking about supplemental payments and the quote unquote loophole that exists there. And as we've talked over several sessions, I'm pretty sure we've had Emily on to walk through the mechanics of this.
Yeah.
This is billions of dollars for many, many, many health systems, right? It's hundreds of billions in aggregate, but like there are specific health systems for whom this is more than $1 billion of revenue for them.
Yeah, that's right. And it is very complex. But despite that, the media and lobbyists and the government, frankly, have been educating everyone about it. And I think that's because they're going to really make meaningful change. And so it's coming kind of through the House committees now, but there's going to be significant limitations on what can be done.
Yep. Sorry, I just saw a number one story, so I'm just lining that up for us once we get there. Yeah. Okay, that was this story. All right, moving to the next one. Drugmakers avoid the worst case pricing scenario for now. So basically, Trump is backing off of strong policy adjustments around the pharma industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think this price controls or price restrictions on pharma has turned into a trade with other nations negotiating point. So there's going to be some kind of leveling between what the U.S. Healthcare industry pays and what is paid in Europe and the developing world, and we pay a lot more, and so they'll either pay more as well, or we'll pay less, or probably some combination of the two. But that's better than feared for the drug companies. I think.
Yeah. All right. This is an opinion piece in the New York Times, a guest essay. However, it's not a third-party opinion; it's a first-party opinion. So the title of the piece is "Trump Leadership: If you want welfare and can work, you must." And then when you go to see who wrote it, it is in fact the heads of Health and Human Services, CMS, the Secretary of Agriculture, and the Secretary of HUD. So Robert Kennedy, Mehmet Oz, Brooke Rollins, and Scott Turner, and basically collectively they are opining and sort of a little bit forecasting for you that work requirements are going to be part of the changes that are coming to the quote unquote welfare programs.
Yeah, and at least two takeaways for me. One is the Trump administration is speaking directly to the people in any way it can. These four heads of agencies together wrote this piece. They didn't trust a reporter to translate for them, and that's different than other administrations, as far as I can remember. Maybe it's happened before.
And this is at least the second time RFK has done this in the short time he's been in the seat.
Yeah, and I think he did it before
on Fox
they were
News.
Elected too.
Yeah. But I mean, as the secretary, he did the first one on Fox News. Now he's doing one on the New York Times.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and I think it's probably healthy. I don't know. I mean, they're the people that are making the decision, so hearing directly from them is a direct source, at least. And then the other thing that I took away is they spend a lot of time really making a case that if you're able to work, it's almost like a self-esteem thing. And even though it's maybe not fun when you first have to go look for work, in overall, it's better for even the people that are forced to get jobs.
Yeah.
And whether you believe that or not, that's a kind of an interesting way to position it.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's new, and I think that's going to come across as pretty patronizing to many when they read this. But regardless, I mean, that's how they're rationalizing their position, and that's their job, is to rationalize their position and to provide something that's a little bit more ideological than just purely, hey, we have a money issue and we can't just let it give it up.
I thought it was to save money. That's before. So that's right. I mean, they positioned it in a way that was better than I was expecting.
I think the adept reader will find that to be a patronizing, set of commentary, but whatever. Okay, so now moving to healthcare finance news. $715 billion Medicaid cut passes House Committee in Reconciliation bill, and here we have our common sense work requirements in place.
Yeah. So
by the way, common sense is in quotes. Those are not my words. I'm reading from a script here.
Yeah. So the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, I don't know how they get to do the authoring, but they were in charge of this part, and they worked for 26 hours straight. I don't know why it took that long, but they were negotiating a bunch of things and came out with sort of pretty close to what they had written in the New York Times op-ed.
Yeah. It seems to me there's a little bit of coordination there.
Yes.
For sure. Okay. A little bit of internal, jousting. RFK Jr. is driving his own subset of the Make America Great Again platform called Make America Healthy Again. And that is kind of the music, the sheet music that the entire HHS is going to be singing from while he's in the seat. And he started talking about unnecessary ingredients in food and starting to ban some of the food coloring, things. He is tackling Roundup and other pesticides that are regularly used and can be connected to chronic disease, potentially even cancers. And other Trump officials are balking at that, just citing how integrated it is into the current production model that we have for food in America.
Yeah, that's right. And I think there's a tension there. I mean, getting rid of the food dyes, the companies that are making these cereals and foods and other things, they already have the formulation for other countries. And so it's a change, but they know how to do it. Getting rid of Roundup and other pesticides, it's not clear how farmers would grow the same volume of crops that they grow now. And so that's where the tension is, or where the debate is back and forth.
Yeah. So, something we'll need to watch, but I find this particular internal squabbling to be somewhat predictable, because I feel that, RFK Jr. was never an easy ad for Trump, right? Mm-hmm. It was always a calculated political deal that was made. RFK did a great job of building a sufficient base to be a meaningful mover in the election. And so when he came over, he wanted something, he got that thing, and he is being consistent with what he wants. So on that level, I at least appreciate that he is not just
he's not changing with
the winds, right?
Yeah.
This is what he came in with. He's doing that thing, and of course, it's not going to make everybody in the Trump administration happy. So we'll see how this plays out over time, right?
Yeah,
we'll see how it plays out. To that end, CMS has rolled out their initial sort of salvo for what CMMI is going to be going forward. Again, as I said, it's going to be underneath the banner of Make America Healthy Again. You and I read through it, and it reads like it's basically value-based care with a different, I don't know, name.
Yeah, I mean, it is. First of all, I was sad, not surprised, but sad when the CMMI program was going to maybe go away, and I'm excited that
it's not.
They're going to still do innovation and try to innovate, because we need to innovate. And when we read the whole report, which we'll link in the show notes, it is talking about aligning financial interests, getting to the root cause of disease, prevention, food, exercise, and if you were in the other party, you might call that social determinants of health and value-based care.
Right.
They don't use those words, but a lot of the portfolio companies that I have in my portfolio, or that I see out there that are doing really interesting work around trying to address social determinants of health, or try to get healthy food to people, or help them get to a doctor's appointment. I think a lot of those things can fit into this new CMS Innovation Center, which is not CMMI, because that program is no longer, but it's very similar to the old. And so I think great, really good to see that they're still doing innovative things, and we need to get people healthy and align financial interests. And so that's good. You can call it anything you want.
So did they actually kill CMMI? Because they're saying here that the author of this piece on CMS.gov is the director of the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation. So did they actually kill CMMI?
I don't know, but even whether they did or not, it's just, it's reborn as the Innovation Center.
Whatever.
It's the same thing.
I very much agree with you. I guess I will say that I think there is a difference to the edge from a Make America Healthy Again perspective versus the social determinants of health perspective. Mm-hmm. There is, and by the way, when I say this, I'm simply giving you my analysis. I'm not saying which one I think is right or which one is wrong. I remember early in my relationship with Bruce Greenstein, I was in the University of Austin, and there was this event that they threw, and Karen DeSalvo was there, and he was there, and a bunch of other people were there, and they were talking about social determinants of health, and I remember him taking issue with social determinants.
Yeah,
of
he didn't
health.
like the term.
He doesn't like the word determinant, right? I can't remember what he wanted to put in place of it. I think it was drivers or something. It was
drivers of health. Is what he was
drivers of health. Yeah. And but I think that it's important. It's important to sort of focus in on that, because I would say the determinants is more of a like, hey, these are the things that determine your health.
Yeah.
Right. Versus saying these are things that influence your health. And it feels to me that, the Make America Healthy Again is more focused on the individual's role, obviously making it easier for them by not poisoning their food, right? Not giving them food, pesticides and food coloring and other things like that, but also highlighting, the importance of behavior, right? Like not just focusing on environment. And this was something Rick was talking about in last week when you guys were talking, focusing on the behavior component of it. And so I think that's important too.
Yes.
I think that's important too, and I think that hopefully over time these two different perspectives, which are both valid, can start to integrate into a more holistic, complete, and effective approach from the government on what we need to do to get to a more preventative healthcare system, right? Because I think both sides have a proper case to make.
Yeah, I agree completely, and I think the words matter.
The words matter.
And what Rick and I were talking about last week, I think is useful to bring up again now, like make people healthy, make America healthy. Everyone's in favor of that.
Of course.
I think. But making it possible for people below some income level to access healthy food and access enough time in the day to exercise, and how is it realistic?
Mm-hmm.
I think that needs to be sort of brought in and woven in, as opposed to sort of just the assumption that if we provide healthy food, everyone will automatically pay more to get it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a balance there, and I don't have the solution, but I think at least there's an innovation center that's working through these things.
Yeah. Into the payer section.
Yes.
We have one story to talk about and 3 different stories on this story. So UnitedHealth Group, the story started this Thursday.
Tuesday.
So the story started on Tuesday then. Reading from the Wall Street Journal, but many different outlets covered it. The headline here is UnitedHealth CEO is out, sending shares plummeting. Andrew Whitty steps down after the stock price, which was fairly resilient. It was resilient in the face of the Change Healthcare hack.
Yeah.
It took a hit after the murder of Brian Thompson, but actually came right back after, some good earnings reports, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it had gotten just shy of $600 in April of this year.
Right.
Basically back to close to its all-time high.
Yes. But basically in a month's time, the price of the stock has been cut in more than half.
Yes.
And so that's just a staggering result. And it feels like information flow is very unevenly distributed right now as it pertains to UnitedHealth Group. So we started with Andrew Whitty stepping down. This is clearly, a fact. We all know this.
Well, yeah, and we might go back because to lose half its value, they missed earnings on April 17th.
Yes, and they lost. They
cited their MLR ratio being bad. We were on this show saying that was a bad kind of harbinger for the whole industry, but then other players came out and they were fine.
Yes.
Yes. I agree. Information, they're very opaque at United, and they've got so many data pools and so many businesses. I don't mean they're intentionally opaque. There's a lot of business lines.
Oh, there's a tremendous number of business lines there.
Yes.
I mean, it's a very comprehensive business. And then on top of that, they've got a fairly healthy investment portfolio.
Yeah.
Their balance sheet is very robust, right? So there's just a lot going on there.
So they missed earnings, and the reason they gave, let me say this, was not occurring to other payers. That's clear.
Yeah. Well, we didn't know that when they did it because
Right,
they came
right.
out first.
Yes.
But then the others came out and it was like, oh, actually their MLRs were not as
Right. So-
damaged or impaired.
Right.
Right. That's right.
So that they lost, so they went from 600, which is about something like 400 billion,
Yeah.
to 425. So they lost a significant amount of value then.
Yes.
And then, so then we get to Tuesday, and the CEO stepped down for personal reasons,
Yes.
and the stock lost another 10%, another 15%.
Yeah. It looks like right now it's sub 300.
Yeah, well, that was Tuesday. It went down, and then the next story came out, and it went down again.
Yes. So the next story, which is that today?
No, yesterday.
Yesterday? Okay. So the next story,
I think it's yesterday. I don't know. Might be today.
I thought it was today, but this is all happening pretty quickly. So the next story, which was Wall Street Journal, the headline was UnitedHealth Group is under criminal investigation for possible Medicare fraud. Now, you and I have been talking to others in the industry and other analysts, and Vic, is there so the DOJ declined to comment,
Right.
right? But certainly this is the Wall Street Journal, right? So I think the thing you and I were trying to talk through was we were trying to see like, okay, DOJ has not commented, but it's a really big deal to use the word criminal in a headline
Yes.
about a company as big as UnitedHealth Group. And so,
And I
and
called.
there were questions, right, about like, are they right? You know,
Yeah.
is this actually happening right now?
Well, so I called, friend of the pod, Emily Evans, to ask her, because she's, I think, the best healthcare policy person that we can call her cell phone on easily. Just said, what's the burden to do a criminal case in Medicare
versus civil?
And in any criminal case versus civil, whether it's healthcare or not, the burden of proof is different. You have to sort of prove beyond a reasonable doubt in criminal, and in civil, it's a preponderance of the evidence. So it's a much lower evidential threshold. That's true in all kinds of cases. But then in Medicare, you also need to prove intent. And so if DOJ decides to pursue this, they would have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that some individual at UnitedHealth Group intended to commit Medicare fraud, meaning they knew it was not appropriate, the reimbursement bills they were putting in. That is very different than, so there's a lot of Medicare fraud that occurs, and usually it is a debate or an argument over maybe like the degree. So in a lot of surgical settings, there's 2, 3, 4 degrees of a procedure.
Sure.
And DOJ will say to a health system, you seem to be claiming a level 4 more often than your peers, and we think that is not appropriate.
Right.
But it's not intent.
Right.
And then they settle, and it's a different thing.
And we covered that story where because Wall Street Journal was actually
there's been fights over the broker inappropriate things.
Right.
Which is also.
No. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the differences. I'm talking about the upcoding. The upcoding thing. But because what they were comparing was UnitedHealthcare and providers outside of Optum versus UnitedHealthcare and providers inside of Optum. That was the story on the Wall Street Journal.
But sending a nurse to a patient's home and having him or her do an interview with the patient, collecting their health risk assessment, and then coding them for the factors that they have, that is not Medicare fraud. Now, if they were not reporting accurately, or they didn't even, in fact, go to the home and they were just making up those interviews, that would be fraud.
Yeah.
it is shocking to me that this was going on in an intentional way to defraud the government.
Well, we don't.
But we don't know. We don't know anything.
I mean, look, to me, what I'm kind of responding to is the Wall Street Journal put out this story. The headline uses the word criminal, and the DOJ declined to comment. And the impairment to the stock price was material. Like, I mean, sub 300 right now, right? So it's just like, this to me just feels like we are out on the edge of this story right now. And I'm sure in the coming weeks it will all land and we'll figure out what was what, and was the Wall Street Journal right? Were they not right? What's the details here? But it's just one of those things where the impact to the company and the company's shareholders, given the lack of comment from the DOJ, which seems, I don't even know, how common is that for a media source to highlight potential criminal investigation from the DOJ, but the DOJ did not comment on it? And I'm asking because I don't track the DOJ that closely.
I don't know, and I will say that it's my guess that the DOJ hasn't made a decision where they feel comfortable stating publicly one way or the other.
Right.
They don't think it is appropriate to say, yes, we are, or no, we're not.
Right.
That's my guess, but I'm certainly not an expert at this. And the Wall Street Journal is one of the few news outlets in the world that I had held up as like a really high esteem. The Journal, the Times.
Sure.
There's very few that are still, at least by me, considered a very trustworthy brand.
Yep.
And I find it hard to believe that they would put this kind of title out without significant sources. But it also is hard to believe that UHG was doing this. So I think you're right. We're out on the edge. I don't know what's going to come up, but it is given where UHG already was with the public opinion, which you and I have talked about, is very unfair, but is what it is. This is terrible. It's very damning to the stock. Now, it also might be true, but it's just going to be hard for them to recover from.
Yeah. I just it has just been it's been incredible to see what the storyline has been for this company, since the first quarter of last year. Just kind of the hits keep coming.
Yeah.
It's just been, and yeah. All right. So let's move to the third story here, which is Steve Helmsley has replaced Andrew Whitty as the CEO in this process. He was the chairman. Yes.
Yeah, and he was CEO for a long time.
Yes.
So
yes.
he's the only one that can come in.
Yes. So they've brought in sort of a veteran and someone who's held in high regard. To
he
step
knows
in.
all the people in Minnesota. Whitty was sort of an outsider. Helmsley is the insider.
Totally, yeah. Because Whitty came from the UK,
and he
was on the Optum side. He was never on the insurance side
right.
of the business, right?
That's right.
So yes, this is a return to a more conventional leader for the company, and
if there's anyone to, I mean, Modern Healthcare's title I think is right. Legendary Helmsley takes over UnitedHealth amid rough seas. If there's only any captain who can shepherd them through this, it's Helmsley. Whether he can or not, I mean, it's pretty rough seas. But,
yeah.
But he knows all the people in Minneapolis and helped build it.
Yeah.
And
And I guess I would say, and I want to be sure, he was the chairman?
yeah, he was.
Okay. So
He probably is chairman. Now he's chairman and CEO.
Well, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. So I would actually say that's a very good sign that the acting chairman steps in as the CEO, even in an interim capacity, because to me, that's kind of a nobody's running. You know what I mean, for the hills. The chairman stepping in is, it's the chairman. The chairman was already sort of most liable person, director stuff. I mean, so
it's better than if he didn't step in.
Well, no, I mean, it's also better than like trying to find somebody else on the management team to step in.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm really trying to compare it to. Like, they didn't bring in somebody else from the management team. It's the chairman came into that seat, right?
Yeah.
So I symbolically, I think that is a strong move.
I don't know Helmsley, but I know people like 1 degree removed from him. I think he views it as like his family. Like it's his company. He was CEO for a long time. Even if they have done a bunch of bad things, I think Helmsley would want to come in and try to do what he can to make it less bad.
Sure.
And if he thinks they're being wronged, he'd want to come in. And so I'm not sure it signals that there's no fire with all this smoke.
No,
I
hope you didn't pick that up from what I was saying.
No, I just thought you meant it was good. It was a good sign that he was coming in. It's better than the alternative, I guess, but it still could be really bad.
I guess there's a lot of different ways you could go about replacing a CEO, and I think the chairman and a past CEO stepping into the active chairman and a past CEO stepping into that role, I think that's very strong.
If he didn't step in, the stock would be a lot lower.
I think that's very, very strong.
Yes,
I think that's very strong for the company and for shareholders. So
yeah, I'm a shareholder.
That was the point.
I'm a shareholder, and I have not bought today. So, I mean, I think we need to wait and see. But yes, if anyone can fix it, Helmsley can.
Yeah. All right. That's all we got to say about that. Because I'm sure next week we'll have a lot more to say as more things, get clear. Moving into health systems, not a whole lot of stories here. Kaiser Permanente sees 16.1% year-over-year Q1 revenue growth following the Ryzen acquisitions. This is good. I'm cheering for Ryzen. My friend Deepak is running the value-based care programs over there. I want Ryzen to do great.
Yeah, I agree. They're doing well, and hopefully they'll keep going.
Yep. Okay. This is coming from MedCity News. Omada Health files to go public. Will it be successful? So the article is talking about how Hinge Health, said that they were going to go with the IPO in March. It's kind of stalled a little bit. I mean, obviously these markets have not been fun markets to try to do an IPO in. So it feels unfair to.
I don't know that it's a negative sign on Hinge.
It feels unfair. It feels unfair to pick on the company given the state of the markets over the last 60, 80 days.
Yeah, I think that's right. It also will be interesting to see if Omada has a different experience or it's all the same.
Yeah, that's right.
The IPO market is just closed. That's very different than Hinge is having.
I find these companies to be very similar.
Yeah,
in their success and their brand reputation. They both have that Amazon partnership that Aaron Martin is sort of stitching together with all these best of breed digital health companies. So they seem very much analogous in terms of their position in digital health. So maybe Omada Health benefits from timing. As opposed to Hinge Health, obviously the stock market's all green right now, and we got the tariff stuff relaxed for 90 days. Maybe they try to like sneak it in this 90-day window, right? Yeah. That might be the best plan for them. Okay, moving on to the next story into the pharma world. Eli Lilly says that trial patients lost more weight on Zepbound than rivals Wegovy. Lilly just continues to show that they are the dominant player in the GLP-1 space.
Yeah, they funded it, but they did a clinical study where they compared their product to rivals.
Yeah, as they needed to.
Yeah, and they did much better. And so their using their product, patients lost 20% versus 13%. I think Lilly's really strong. They're on like firing all cylinders right now.
Yeah, they're they're crushing. Bear shares jump after results beat expectations on pharma strength. Higher sales in pharma and consumer health were offset by a drop in crop science. So Bear makes Roundup, by the way.
Yeah, they bought Monsanto.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that was a great
Not great
idea,
for the brand.
but
Not great for the brand.
But they did so well on the pharma side that it sort of outpaced all the troubles in Roundup.
Yeah. All right, moving to Med City. I think it's our last story on pharma. GSK makes a big liver disease move with $1.2 billion deal for phase 3 ready MASH drug. MASH is kind of tough.
Yeah.
Liver, condition. And phase 3 ready. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Fairly de-risked at that point. Let's see. What can we tell about this? This is a Boston Pharmaceuticals asset. Mm-hmm. And it feels like $1 billion is around the buying price. I feel like every time we talk about one of these like single assets being purchased, it's like $1 billion.
Single assets sort of being acquired, but not the whole company, like licensed in, or in this case, they're buying one of several assets.
Yep. All right, so this is this kind of special interest Health and Us story. Mm-hmm. A baby is healed. This is New York Times. A baby is healed with world's first personalized gene editing treatment. So this is a 9.5-month-old who had a rare condition and was treated in a CRISPR modality, right?
Yeah, I think cured. So he had a
cute picture too.
Genetic defect where his body could not process ammonia, and I think it's one of the genes, and so he was in the NICU and in ICU.
It affects 1 in 1.3 million babies.
Yeah.
So that's how rare it is.
Yeah, and so there was very little hope. Most babies die in the first week with this genetic defect, and none of them, if they do live, they have all kinds of problems. And so researchers approached the parents with trying to cure it with gene editing through CRISPR. And there were, of course, a lot of regulatory hurdles and a lot of science to be put together. But when he was 4 months old, I think he got his first treatment. They gave a very low dose to start because no CRISPR gene editing had been done in humans. This was the first human, I think. And it worked. And so now he's gotten 3 or 4 other treatments, and he should be cured for life, which is incredible.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, listen, it would be great if we can figure out the cost part of this, if we can figure out the cold chain part of this, if we can figure out the manufacturing, part of this. But this is obviously, it's just
incredible.
It's incredible.
This boy is going to have a life and do all kinds of great things,
and his parents will get to raise him.
Yeah,
it gives me chills. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, AI rundown. New York Times, your AI radiologist will not be with you soon. Experts predicted that artificial intelligence would steal radiology jobs, but at the Mayo Clinic, the technology has been more friend than foe. Well, first of all, Mayo Clinic leans into everything. And so, of course, when you lean in, you get to partner with the technology as opposed to be replaced by it. But also, I think for the most part, radiologists are already very sort of first adopters on technology. And so as a general rule, they're not going to be the ones to be replaced. They're going to be the ones to continue to evolve what it means to be a radiologist, leveraging these technologies and finding new and novel ways for them to provide value from a human perspective.
Yes. And I think because their job is really translating technology to other doctors and to patients.
Yes.
Starting with X-rays and then MRI and then CT and now AI.
On and on and on.
Their job is that. And it has started, it was with imaging at first, which is where you get the name radiologist, but now it's sort of lots of diagnostic tools, not only images. It's a lot of images that have been significantly affected by technology, including CT and MRI. And so I choose to view this as kind of a prototype or a lesson for other doctors and for me, how can we work with AI successfully?
Right.
And instead of throw up our hands and say, AI is not going to affect venture capital and I'm not going to learn about it. Instead, what Mayo radiologists did that was very successful is they leaned, as you said, they leaned in. They're using AI to do their job more effectively. And there's lots of aspects of a radiologist's job. Measuring the volume of a kidney was the example they gave in the article that you can do with the image, and there's math involved, and the human can take measurements and then do the math. But that's not the best use of the radiologist's 45 minutes to go through that calculation. And now they have got AI to do that. And then they can use their judgment and their experience to do other things. And it really just up-leveled what they could do as a radiologist. And you're right, they are sort of evolving how they, for themselves, define their role. But I think every specialty can do that if they choose to. So maybe some specialties won't, but I think that's up to the doctor to think through it.
Yep, agree. Okay. OpenAI, in partnership with several other, folks, I think Harvard and some other academic institutions, they created something called Health Bench, which is an evaluation system for AI and human health.
Yeah, and so they have taken 5,000 common health interactions, what they call it. So the example they gave is a neighbor sees his neighbor, on the ground in the front yard and calls 911. And so they sort of have that interaction, and then they have doctors assessing and responding the way that they think is best. And then they use that to train AI, and then they sort of iterated around that. And so if you go down almost to the bottom, you can see the sort of the comparison of doctors versus the AI. Keep going. I think it's the last one.
Okay.
And so you can see, like, over time, for people that are not watching, there's sort of how would an individual doctor sort of assess an emergency referral is the top one. And of course, there's a range, right? And some doctors do it well, some don't do it well.
Yep.
And they have a scoring system. And then they now have a way to determine where is AI and which version and how are they doing. And so they have sort of taken a realistic healthcare setting, 5,000 of them, and created a training infrastructure maybe. And now they have benchmarks and a way to see how the AI is doing. And in general, it's tracking largely similar to the individual human physicians. It's not significantly better, but it's also not really worse. And of course, it will keep getting better over time.
Mm-hmm. All right. I thought this was an interesting story. We talked earlier about the digital workforce growing, and Moderna has merged its tech and HR departments. And so now they're what would typically be sort of your chief people officer or chief human resources officer is their chief people and digital technology officer. And this is because they have a blending of human resources and digital resources, and they just need to manage all the resources under one roof.
Yeah, which I had not conceived of that before reading this article,
right.
But it's pretty interesting that you would combine your human resources and technology resources together, because they're sort of doing jobs for the company, and I think that's going to be more and more common as we have agents and other tools out there.
And you think about sort of the emotional and psychological aspects of it, right? Like, you don't want the chief people officer to be anti-AI.
Right.
So you kind of have to have it roll up to them, right? So that they can help their human workforce with the psychological challenge of like working alongside a digital workforce, right? And what that looks like. And you don't want it to be the humans are over here, the chief technology people are over here, and like they're fighting because that's not what you want. Yeah. So to me, that was what I pulled away from it. I was thinking about how do you do this in a way that helps the humans find a way to do this that isn't so I don't know, just so negative.
Yeah, it helps the humans that are working. And if you go back to the Mayo and radiologist example, I think the Mayo Clinic now can do radiology reports for many more groups. They can take many more cases in, and that someone has to manage that body of work and sort of allocate their people time and their tech time. And yes, having someone sort of over that who can empower the humans and keep them motivated on doing what they want to do, but also take away things that are maybe not why they got into radiology, to do this, measure the volume of a kidney. I think that's optimistic. It's an optimistic take.
Yep. Perplexity's valuation surges to $14 billion in a new funding round. So Perplexity keeping up pace with many of the other big AI companies. They're not a frontier model, but they're probably they're easily one of the biggest apps that is sort of a front end to these types of models. $14 billion. How does that sort of compare to some of our vibe coding rounds that are happening, the Cursors and the Windsurfs and stuff like that?
Behind them.
Yeah.
They're coming out with a browser, which was kind of interesting.
That makes sense for them.
Yeah, that's right.
I think Perplexity should do all the front end things when it comes
Right.
to surfing, searching.
Yes.
Like they should do that for sure.
That's right.
And it's interesting. I've talked to people who, because of the way that they market and they distribute, like associate certain evolutionary features in AI with Perplexity. So, for example, I feel like Perplexity did a really good job on marketing deep research.
Mm-hmm.
And people have some subset of the people out there are associating deep research with Perplexity when
Everyone has it now. They all have it.
It's not. I mean, it really was DeepSeek first, right? That really blew that out of the water, and now OpenAI has it, and Claude has it, and blah blah blah. But again, this is where distribution and brand really do matter.
Yeah,
and interface.
Yeah.
All right. Databricks purchased Neon for $1 billion.
Yeah, so I had never heard of Neon before, and I'm fairly active in the space. And so for people that don't know, Neon is a open source database provider, and because it's open source, of course, you could buy the Postgres SQL you don't need to buy it, but they make it much easier to use. And then they are kind of tuned or designed really for AI agents to quickly put together a set of data that they need for a period of time. Might be a short period of time, could be a long period of time, but in a very automated way, and you can set the guardrails where you want it. So I think seems like a great purchase for Databricks, which is sort of the huge database, data lakes and databases, and the combination I think is pretty interesting.
Yep, agree. All right, penultimate story. Brett Adcock is the founder of Figure Robot, which is one of the leading robot companies out there. He's one of 300 different accounts that I have in my AI list on X. I normally see him pushing stuff about his robots, but he did this really cool rundown. I don't know if he does a weekly rundown, but he did a really cool rundown, and there were a couple of stories here worth pointing out. I think that Gemini had some new features released this week on the image generation side of things. Meta dropped some new models. Microsoft updated Copilots with Pages, which is a Canvas-like feature. We got some details on Eric Schmidt's new Back to Future House, which is his AI company. So I think the most important thing here is we're going to put a link in the show notes to this so you can get just a total download.
Almost a reference.
Of everything that happened this week. And what I like about it is it gives you a sense of like how ridiculously robust the innovation is in this space. It's just crazy. Every single company is coming out with stuff every week.
Yeah.
Every week.
That's right.
The pace of innovation in AI right now is just dumbfounding. So, all right, final story. Wall Street Journal. Apple to support brain implant control of its devices. So I think Elon has done a very good job of making brain implant control synonymous with Neuralink.
Yeah.
But we are not talking about Neuralink here. We're talking about a company called Synchron. And Apple is working with them on making the brain-computer interfaces available to people with disabilities.
Yeah. And it is it's incredible to see it start to become more normalized now. So when Neuralink came out, it was sort of cutting edge and interesting, but definitely science fiction-ish. And I just think when Apple and the Apple Vision Pro bring something to market, it's just a much bigger adoption possibility.
Yep, agree.
And so they are showing what it could. They have a patient with ALS he's the first user of it. And it's there's a lot of promise. It's early, and you still have to put a stent into the brain, so it involves a surgical procedure. But it's getting much more normalized. There's now multiple companies pursuing this, which will be healthy to kind of have hopefully positive peer pressure and make them all do better. So I think a good story.
I mean, when I think about all the stories we just covered, a couple of themes. Our science and technology right now is unbelievable.
Yes.
Unbelievable, right? CRISPR, brain implant.
Yeah,
control.
we cured a baby who would have died.
It's just unbelievable, right?
And then this guy with ALS, he can't walk, he can't experience things, and he is now experiencing them through the Apple Vision Pro.
Yes.
They had him talking about going to the Alps, even though he can't go to the Alps, and he's experiencing it.
Yeah. So, just absolutely incredible. And then also our industry and government stuff, really, really hard. Really hard. That's my takeaway for this week, Incredible promise through technology and incredible challenges when it comes to government matters and industry affairs.
That's right. The future is bright, but we have to get there.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
Very hard. Very hard. Rick did a great job last week.
Yeah. It was fun to do it with him.
Yeah. This is his first time, right? Guest hosting?
Yeah. Yeah. We did a show about AI in radiology, but first time hosting.
As a proper host on the rundown, though.
Yeah.
Right?
He brought, like all the guest hosts, he brought all these notes in, which was great to see. And then we go through so fast, he couldn't refer to them. Yeah, but he knows all the stuff backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
So.
But they all want to prep and everything. And I'm like, listen.
You're not going to be able to refer to your notes.
Unprepped I am for the show. Don't worry. Just come in and talk. You'll do fine. You'll do fine.
Yeah.
All right, but these guys have higher standards for how they're seen in public than I do, right?
Well, and you've also done it a lot.
All right, great show. Thank you as always, and see you next week.